This week we're going to look at making Ben & Jerry's Fudgy Flan flavour. Man, that's a lot of F's. So first off, we need to talk about flan. Now, to me, as an old far Englishman, flan is something different. Flan is kind of like a quiche, if you will. But in Europe, we call flan crème caramel, which is a fancy French dessert. It's not fancy at all. It's like a baked custard with a semi-burnt caramel drizzled over the top, and it's baked upside down. So you put the caramel in, the burnt caramel in the bottom, then you set that in the refrigerator for a few minutes, then you put your custard over the top, and then you bake it. Then when you turn it out, it's all like that. Exactly the same as flan. Now, flan is a South American thing. So Spanish-speaking regions of South America, that's what they call flan. It has pretty good reviews, to be fair, but they all say the same thing, and that is the Crème Pâtissière, so pastry cream, if you will. It is totally missing out the tubs. And I can tell you why that happens, and that is if you make Crème Pâtissière, I don't know whether to say it the fancy way, like that, or pastry cream. Maybe I'll just mix and match. If you make that, with the moment you put it in the freezer, it will split as it starts to defrost. And that's just the nature of how it's made. The balance of the ingredients means it will start to separate as it moves out of its frozen state into a semi-frozen state. And it will just disappear into the ice cream. So maybe that's what they're doing. But, you know, we also know that Ben & Jerry's literally don't give a shit as to what they put in the tubs. They say one thing on the tub, and what you get inside is often like totally different. You know, add-ins missing, none of this, loads of that. Now that you can make it at home, you're kind of in control as to what you do to it. So that's what we're going to do today. How do they describe it? Ben & Jerry's describe Fudgy Flan as a burnt caramel ice cream with fudge brownies and pastry cream swirls. So sounds really good. Let's get on and make it. What are we going to need for the ice cream base? We're going to change it up slightly. We're going to keep the base the same, burnt caramel base. We're going to do brownie add-ins. I'm not going to make brownies from scratch this time. I'm going to use a packet mix brownie. You can use 2-bite brownies from Costco. They're excellent ice cream if you're interested. And that's because they're loaded in sugar, so they don't freeze super hard. But the pastry cream swirl, we're going to do a slightly different take on that. We're going to do a modified pastry cream, Crème Pâtissière, so that it doesn't split. So for the ice cream base for Fudgy Flan, you're going to need 330 grams of whipping cream, or higher, 454 grams of whole milk, which is 3.25% here, 30 grams of burnt caramel, which is burnt in a pan with a touch of water, but we'll go through that a bit later, 112 grams of sugar, 1.5 grams of Guar, 4 grams less than 35 grams of skim milk powder. For the pastry cream, the Crème Pâtissière, 175 grams of sugar, 45 grams of all-purpose flour, or plain flour in England and Europe, 2 whole eggs, 500 grams of milk that has been heated, 100 grams of cream, 10 grams of honey. You could also use glucose or invert sugar, 5 grams of butter, 7.5 grams of vanilla extract, and if you want to add a vanilla bean seeds into that, then you absolutely can. Finally, a pinch of salt to balance that out. So there we go, a lot of stuff. See why I don't want to make the brownies too. Anyway, let's get everything weighed out and start making this burnt caramel. 50 grams of sugar and add a touch of water to it. You don't need to add a huge amount of water. You're just trying to make that sugar kind of wet. It's going to be burnt off anyway. So with those now combined, we can pull it into a pan. Don't swirl it, don't touch it with anything. Don't stir it. We're going to put it on heat, and we're going to gently heat this up until we get to quite a dark color. So burnt caramel, as we're adding this to dairy, is going to lose a lot of the flavor. So we're going to burn it quite a bit. So let's get that going now. That's going on a medium-high setting. This is the stage that we're going to bring it up to. The temperature is almost irrelevant because we are literally just giving it the flavor. Temperature is much more important for this kind of thing when you're making actual caramels with the inclusion of butter and cream. That's the stage where you need to be careful as to where you cook it to. That's the final cooking stage of your sugar emulsion. In this situation, we just need to bring it up to a high temperature to burn it. So keeping an eye on our sugar, we're going to get our milk and cream in here. 454 of milk, 330 of cream. Our water is starting to evaporate off nicely. The sugar syrup has started to thicken, which means it's going to start browning pretty quickly. Keep an eye on it, don't walk away. It will burn really quickly, although we do want it to burn. So how much we want it to burn, that depends on how much flavour you want. So with that in there, what we've got in here is we've got our skim milk powder, we've got our sugar, we've got our guar, and we've got our lecithin. I'm using soy lecithin in this. Doesn't matter if you use sunflower lecithin, liquid lecithin, that is fine. By using lecithin on its own, not egg yolks, we don't have to superheat this base. We're just gonna stir it to dissolve the sugar. So this is actually a semi-cold process. Let's get these in here and give these a nice stir. Caramel is starting to brown now, so I do need to keep an eye on this. Stirring this will dissolve the sugars in a couple of minutes, so everything should tally up quite nicely then. We're browning nicely. Now adding hot caramel to this cold base would be an absolute nightmare. It would just go rock solid. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a little bit of our base and put that in a container like so. And we're gonna pop this in a microwave and heat this up. Our little bit of base is heated up. A tiny whisk, that's too tiny. This is gonna spit. We need 30 grams of this into here. There we go. And then you can simply stir that back together. Because that base is warm, that will reliquefy the caramel. So just keep stirring and it will turn back to liquid. If your caramel seizes up in adding it to your dairy, don't stress about it. You can just pop it in the microwave for 5-second bursts. Heat that all back up together while stirring it, and it will all come back to a nice caramel dairy mix. Don't heat it for too long. That sugar is already super hot. If you go more than 5 seconds at a time, the likelihood is it will boil over and make an absolute mess of your microwave. Ask me how I know. But we need to keep stirring this for a little bit to cool it back down. We don't want to add this boiling hot sugar dairy mixture back into all our dairy. It will just solidify and then we'll have to heat the whole thing back up. So what we can just do is just stir that for a few minutes to bring that down to an acceptable temperature. If again, you want to put this, if you put this into your dairy base and it solidifies and turns into a solid block, don't stress about it. Pop it on a hob for a few minutes whilst gently heating it up. Once you get to about 30 to 35 C, the sugar will start to melt back down and you can just stir it back together and it will all incorporate nicely. Adding caramels to dairy bases, specifically cold dairy bases, is quite difficult. So doing a cold processed caramel ice cream, it's not ideal. Right, now we're all completely mixed together. Let's pour this into our base while stirring it. Stir it well as you mix it back together. Nicely incorporated. Nice burnt caramel smell coming out of there. So we're just going to keep stirring this for a couple of minutes. Make sure all of that is completely reincorporated. Caramel will just dissolve in liquid. It will just take longer in a cold liquid than it would in a hot liquid. So again, don't stress. If things go wrong, there's always a way around it. There is our burnt caramel ice cream base. That can now go in a container. We're going to just let this chill down to fridge temperatures. And we're doing that because we've added that hot sugar. We've brought the temperature up. We've added solids into this cold dairy. So that's brought the temperature up. So we're going to get this nice chill back down, you know, whatever your fridge temperature is, usually 2 to 3 centigrade. So that's what we're going to do here. Whilst that's chilling, let's make the pastry cream or crème pâtissière. Right, for the pastry cream, let's get our milk and cream in here because we're going to heat this up in the microwave. So 500 of milk, 100 of cream. You can halve the amount of pastry cream here. I'm going to use this for something else, but this will give you 5, 6, 7, about 800 grams worth of pastry cream. If you don't want that much, you can just halve it because that'll be more than enough for a 1 kilo base. So with that in there, we're going to pop this in a microwave and heat it up. We're going to get it quite hot being about 85 centigrade. With that doing that, we're going to put our sugar and our flour in here. So sugar, 175 grams of sugar, 45 grams of our all-purpose flour, and we're going to just mix that together. Into our flour and our sugar, we're going to add our 2 eggs and stir all of that together until it's all nicely combined and a smooth paste. Now our milk and cream is up to temperature, we're going to start to combine this with our egg, sugar and flour mixture, just a little bit at a time. If you dump it all in, it will take you forever to combine it back up. So just a little bit, and then you can start adding it a little bit more as you go. So we're going to pop this on heat and just a medium-high heat and keep stirring constantly and it will start to thicken up nicely. So as it comes up to that boiling point, simmering point, it will really start to thicken. That's that flour kicking in. Pinch of salt, stir that in. 5 grams of honey. In goes our vanilla, 7.5 grams. Our butter, 5 grams. Stir that in. And you can add vanilla bean if you want. Scrape the seeds out, etc., etc. I'm going to use vanilla bean powder. Now we have our flan creme caramel flavor here. This is where this is. So that caramel flavor from the dessert is in the base. This is our vanilla custard flavor in here. All we need to do now is put this into a container like that. And we're going to cover it with our plastic wrap or cling film, but we're going to cover that top. We're going to put it straight on the surface. We don't want a skin filming on this. To cool down somewhat before we put it in the fridge, and then we can deal with everything when it's ready. Right, let's get the ice cream in and churning. We're going to get the brownies out of the refrigerator / freezer. I'm going to use Costco 2-bite brownies. Use whatever brownies you have available. I'm going to do a brownie video soon, so maybe try those. And we'll get our Crème Pâtissière out ready. So ice cream in first. Nice and quiet after having the work done. For those that follow along, there was a vibratory issue caused inside the machine. So as the machine vibrates, it caused the movement of some of the electrical cables, and then those cables got pulled off eventually. It's not really a manufacturing default, more just a one-off. So I wouldn't really worry about it. These machines are a bit like tanks. And our brownies. So I'm going to get these brownies chopped up, and then once we dish up, we can start spooning it all together. Caramel ice creams are much easier made when you do them in a more traditional sense. You heat up the base, you heat up the caramel, you combine the two, and then once it's all emulsified together, you cool it down as normal. That's the way to make caramel ice creams. Not this way, which is cold processed caramel. It's a pain, but I wanted to show you that it can be done anyway. Yeah, doing cold processed caramel ice cream is a pain in the ass. I'm not going to lie. You know, you're taking, because we're not adding. Oh, in this one anyway. Don't ask me why I wanted to do it this way. I don't know. Can't tell you why. Sometimes I just like to do things really the most awkward way possible, and that's what it is. Because in this caramel, we're not taking, you know, cream and butter and adding it in to create a softer caramel texture and then adding that back into the base. We're taking deeply burnt caramel without the dairy or the butter and adding that into the dairy base. So having to heat that bit of base up so that it would actually combine, it's doable, yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't do it in the microwave like I did it. I would take some of that base out like I did, put it in a small pan, heat that up, then add that ultra deep burnt caramel into that, make sure that it's completely emulsified. So you've got to get that little bit of base up really high in temperature, you know, kind of 80, 90 C, and then add the whole lot back into your base. That way. It obviously worked because I've done it here, but I wouldn't recommend it. Here we go. Now, as you can see by the picture on screen now, the pastry cream, Crème Pâtissière, is visible and it's noticeable streaks through. It's not super bright color because you've got, it's basically the same color. but it scooped and it didn't separate because obviously that pastry cream has been balanced to suit the ice cream. I don't know whether I like it or not. The burnt caramel flavour absolutely comes through in this base, much more than I thought it would, to be fair. So the caramel ice cream is pretty decent. Burnt caramel ice cream. That's the flavour that you're getting. Maybe it's just that I'm not a big fan of burnt caramel ice cream. The Crème Pâtissière it's not separated, but it's not super smooth either. And I'm not sure you'd be able to get that. It's still kind of icy in the way that like a raspberry ripple would be icy. The brownies, like I said, these are Costco 2x brownies. They've got this kind of perfect freezing texture, and Ghirardelli boxed brownies, picture on screen. These work perfectly in ice cream too. Don't overcook them. You don't want cakey brownies in ice cream. You want super fudgy brownies, borderline uncooked. Anyway, it's nice to get back to what this channel used to do, and that's just something I want to touch on before we close out this video, is for the last maybe 18 months, because this channel is just me, I do all the filming, all the editing, all the making, everything. It's just me. Nobody else helps me with this channel at all. I, for some reason, tried to please a certain group of people, and I'm not doing that anymore. So we're just going to go back to what Polar Ice Cream was always about, and that is making really good ice creams, luxury ice creams at home. Things like Ben & Jerry's and Haagen-Dazs, Jenny's, you name it. All the big ice cream companies, we're going to go back to making all of their kind of flavors. So that is what this channel is going to go. We're going to go back to roots. So if you've got an ice cream that is purchasable in the stores, let me know what it is and we'll make it. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time when I have no idea what I'm going to make. So if you want to suggest something, go for it. You've got 3 days and then I'll make it.